Good morning, EBC! All right, that was my best impression of Robin Williams from Good Morning Vietnam. From time to time, Toby will belt that out, and so he's rubbing off on me. Anyway, good morning. I hope you are doing well. There I go again, touching my face. I'm sporting my evergreen VBS shirt from last year, hopeful that it will be happening again this year, but we will see. Thank you for joining us this morning for this social gathering around God's Word. I hope you're being blessed by your time in the Psalms and Proverbs, and that you're finding ways to connect around it with people you love or people in the church or both. Let's get right to the question I asked yesterday. Do you believe in corporal punishment? Is it biblically warranted? Is it even biblically mandated? Wanted to read to you what I got from gotquestions.org, an excellent resource that I've mentioned before. And it says, when the subject of Christian spanking is broached, it must be assumed that the corporal punishment in question does not occur in an abusive way. It is not extreme nor given in anger, but proportionate to the offense and part of a loving, responsible relationship. And the fact is, spanking is efficient and can be very effective. Some children respond to spanking quickly and completely when all other types of punishment fail. Parents of a strong-willed 3-year-old who loves to run out into the street understand they have two choices: spank promptly to curb the dangerous behavior right away, or confine their children to a strictly controlled environment that may disrupt the entire family and restrict the child from other activities. The Bible neither explicitly demands nor forbids the spanking of children. Although the rod of Proverbs 13:24, like we talked about yesterday, could refer to reproof in general, corporal punishment cannot be excluded as an option. Firm, decisive discipline is vital to the well-being of a child. It provides guidance and wisdom the child will need later in life. Fathers in the New Testament provide or bear a responsibility to rear their children in the training and instruction of the Lord, Ephesians 6:4. Mode of discipline is not specified. I think that's very well stated, and I agree with it. And I agree that there are times when, depending on the child, depending on your relationship with them, depending on where you are at with your own temper and your own heart, that spanking is the best option. But it's something we have to be very, very careful with. It's been abused so much, and if we end up abusing our children with it, it is awful, horrible. So we need to be very careful, brothers and sisters. Let's jump right into Psalm 31. And this is another Psalm of David. It says it's for the director of music. I'd really be interested in hearing this psalm completely put to music. It just definitely does not seem like one we could readily sing. It would be interesting to hear it, but I would definitely enjoy that. But I do see that there's a pattern here. There's a pattern that David sets forth, and it is I trust you, God. Please help me. And that is what I see happen here several times, starting in verse 1 with, in you, Lord, I have taken refuge. In other words, I trust you. Then there is this call for help. Help me. And again, in verse 4, keep me from the trap that is set for me, for you are my refuge. In other words, I trust you. And there's the following verses that make it clear, I trust you. And then again in verse 9, help me. And that whole verse 9 through 13 is basically a help me, a call to help me. And then again in verse 14, I trust you, and then help me. And then verse 19 again, I trust you. And then there's this personal experience of David who trusted God and who was helped. It says in the end of verse 22, when I called to you for help, you heard my cry for mercy. And then verse 23 is then, it's almost like a therefore, people who love the Lord, worship him, trust him, and be strong in him, all you who hope in the Lord. And so if you need that encouragement, if you need to be reminded to trust in God, and that it's okay to call to him for help, and you want to have that camaraderie with somebody else who really needs to help trusting the Lord, who's calling upon the Lord, who's saying, help me, I need help, this is a good chapter to come back to. And I wanted to point out that verse 12, that verses 9 through 11, if you are really struggling physically, this is an excellent one to come back to. If you've got disease, if you are hurting and anguish and have been for a while, be comforted by those verses. And then verse 15, it says, my times are in your hands. That's a great reminder that God is in control, God is sovereign, and that we can go to him knowing that he is completely in the know, and we would be wise to trust him and to go to him. And then chapter 14 of Proverbs, I wanted to point out a couple here. Verse 9, fools mock at making amends for sin, but goodwill is found among the upright. And I think that's a really good point, that we as Christians, as Christ followers, we need to make sure that we are going to those that we have sinned against and making amends, that it's not enough to just feel some remorse and then move on. And verse 10, each heart knows its own bitterness and no one else can share its joy. And a good reminder that we are the ones that between us and God know where our hearts are really at more fully than anybody else. So we need to make sure that we are bringing it up between us and God in our prayer time and asking him to search us out and reveal if there be any wicked way in us. And then verse 12, there is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. And again, there's that need to know wisdom. How do we know which way leads to death and which way leads to life? Well, we have to have that fear of God. That's the beginning of wisdom, right? And so, again, verse 26 and 27 talk about the fear of the Lord. Whoever fears the Lord has a secure fortress, and for their children it will be a refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, turning a person from the snares of death. So I want to encourage you to continue to think upon and to grow in the fear of the Lord. And I want to leave you with this question. What do you miss most other than the gathering as a church during this time of quarantine? What do you miss most right now other than gathering as a church during this time of quarantine? I love you, brothers and sisters. God bless you. Hopefully we'll see each other soon.